MyPillow.com. Click on the 4-pack special tab and save 50% off the 4-pack, which includes 2 MyPillow premiums and 2 Go Anywhere pillows. Call 1-800-266-4719. That's 1-800-266-4719. Take advantage of this limited time offer. Go to MyPillow.com now. Click on the 4-pack special tab and use promo code COMFORT at checkout. Are you or someone you love one of the nearly 1 million Americans living with Parkinson's disease? There is no known cure, but you have the power to help change that by participating in a clinical trial. The Michael J. Fox Foundation will help get you started. Visit michaeljfox.org/participant pack to download the new Parkinson's Trial Participant Pack. It's free and available right now. That's michaeljfox.org/participant pack. Visit today.
Why are you listening to this radio station? Why? When you can host your own radio show. You're listening and you think you can do better? You have a message or a product you want everyone to know about. Host your own radio show. Team up with the area's best radio professionals and let them make you sound like you should be on NBC. KCAA NBC Radio, that is. KCAA produces more than 50 local programs each week on subjects ranging from business and sports to political talk, vegan diets, or even marijuana-related issues. We don't just broadcast on the radio, we broadcast to the world. Online, on TV, on social media, on Facebook. You'll be all over. Imagine what your friends will say. And KCAA reaches over 5 million people on 3 radio stations. Join the staff on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM. NBC Radio. Jump on the KCAA Express. Call 909-793-1065. That's 909-793-1065. And get ready to transmit.
This is KCAA.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at KCAAradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. By the way, you can follow this show on Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John. And guess what, kids? We are now on Instagram. Yes, we have graduated to Instagram, so we are there. So come and follow us. We'd love to see you there. Every day I'm trying to put a little message there. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it's the usual Father John Reed. But either way, you can follow us there. All of God's children are endowed with an extraordinary purpose and ability. I am on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing a false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And tonight, this portion of the show is brought to you by Draper & Kramer Mortgage Corporation, the name you've trusted for over 100 years. If you are looking to refinance or purchase a home, contact my friend Ernie Gonzalez at 888-284-8332. Again, that's 888-284-8332, or online at mortgagesbyernie.com. Tell them Father John sent you. Draper & Kramer Mortgage Corporation, NMLS 2551, is licensed by the Department of Business Oversight under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Ernie Gonzalez, NMLS 1086147, an equal housing lender. And do tell Ernie I said hello. They're great folks over there. I know some of you have been calling them and getting some loans through them, and they do a fabulous job. And couple things going on. For those of you who showed up in Costa Mesa to the Celebration of Light service at Harbor Lawn, it was great to see you, and thank you for coming out. Also, coming up in February, I will be teaming up with Mountain View Cemetery and Mortuary to do a one-night grief workshop. This will be for no charge to the public. It's just a community service. You know, grief is a difficult thing for all of us to walk through. And so I'd like to invite you to come spend some time with us. Stay tuned, and I'll share with you the exact date and times. We're still putting that together. Mountain View is being generous enough to share space with us and also provide refreshments. But grief is something we should never walk through alone. Also, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but there was another teen shooting today in Indiana. Fortunately, someone tipped the police off, so they met the shooter at the school itself, but unfortunately, it did end in a death, and it was the shooter himself. 14-year-olds should not be going to school to kill other teenagers. This is not a Republican or Democrat thing. This is an American thing. It's a humanity thing. We need to come together. Please write your legislators and tell them it's time to say no to NRA and put some good sense into our gun laws. Who's it going to hurt if we have decent background checks and if we have some safety laws? For those of you watching on YouTube, I'd like to point out to you this beautiful arrangement of flowers. Now, Gabby did this, and I don't know about you, but I'm pretty darn impressed. If I had that kind of talent, well, I'd be doing something else right now. But I don't, so in the meantime, I do radio and sell shoes. So I don't really sell shoes, but I am a soul man. So that's some of the things going on around town. I'm really excited tonight because my guest this evening is a dear friend of mine, the Reverend Dr. Gene Wallace. He is a retired Episcopalian priest and a man with great wisdom, someone who I see, if I may say so, as a personal mystic friend of mine who has great spiritual practice. And so he's going to share some thoughts with us tonight on the spirituality of the season of Advent. Gene, say hello to everybody.
Well, thank you very much, Father John. This is truly a privilege to be here with you, and I stand in awe of what you're doing. This is really a wonderful service that you're offering, and it's my privilege to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. Well, let's talk a little bit about the holiness of the season of Advent, because I know a lot of people really don't know what that's about. They know they get a calendar, and there's little chocolates in it and such, but that's really what it's not about. What is this holy season supposed to be?
Well, I'd like to start by reading the first sentence of the first Sunday of Advent Collect.
Perfect.
It says, Almighty God, give us grace to cast away the works of darkness and put on the armor of light, now in the time of this mortal life. That's spirituality, a recognition that life is not complete, and that it requires effort on our part to cast off what holds us back, the darkness part, and to put on the light, that which brightens us and brings us to the fullness of who we're supposed to be. And the fact that it says, in this mortal life, it's something here and now. It's not something that is coming after the grave or in some future point. It's here and now. So the spirituality for Advent for me has to do with this season of preparation so that I'm ready to receive God's great gifts.
You said something I want to go back to because I think it's a very important point. You talked about being here and now. And I think in many parts of Christianity, we've gotten this idea that our spirituality is really a great escape plan that's going to happen someday. And we forget all about today. I can remember hearing as a child this veil of tears, and someday we might know joy. And if I'm hearing you correctly, that's not the truth. Here and now is where we're supposed to have that joy. Would that be correct?
Oh, absolutely. My sense of the cycle of spirituality, I guess you could say, which is very clear in the Christian tradition as well as in all major faith traditions. In the Christian tradition, for example, we have a cycle of preparation, celebration, and application.
Yes.
And we call that Advent, Christmas, and Epiphany. And then the cycle begins again. Preparation is Lent, celebration is Easter, and application is the season of Pentecost. The fact that we have a cycle like that to take us through makes it very real to us that this is a daily office. It's a daily prayer.
You know, I brought to mind that in order to receive the new, we have to let go of some of the old. And I think of Thich Nhat Hanh giving a story where he had received a Christian missionary, and they're exchanging ideas on their spiritual beliefs. And while the Christian missionary is going on, Thich Nhat Hanh is pouring tea into this cup. And the guy continues to talk, and Thich Nhat Hanh continues to pour. Well, the cup is full and it's overflowing and overflowing until finally the missionary says, "Stop. No more will go in." And Thich Nhat Hanh says to him, "Just as this cup of tea, how can I tell you of spirituality of Buddhism unless you first empty out the cup so I can refill it?"
Oh, that's a wonderful image. Absolutely. Yeah, the sense that we have a relationship with a living God that is not dictated to us by God.
Right.
And I think the exercise of free will is so important in thinking about relationship with God. God does not do things for us in the way that is a mechanical manipulation.
Right.
God creates desire. And when we are aware of the desire, then we have the responsibility to respond to that desire and to pursue it wherever it may take us. And when you do that, you open yourself up to a spiritual nightmare of sorts, because you just don't know where it's going to take you. And I think it's at that point that so many people resist because of the fear of getting to a situation where they don't know how to handle the crisis. But spirituality always involves crisis. There's no way around it.
Well, a couple things on that. You take the word desire from the Latin point of view, it's thought, sire of God. So it's thought from God. And that does lead to a crisis, because crisis time is awakening time. We have to find new answers to old situations. But in the Chinese sense of crisis, it means two things: danger and opportunity.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I like that image, danger and opportunity. Yeah, this breaking open, I very much like Elizabeth Lesser's work.
Yes.
Broken Open is the name of her most famous book. Elizabeth Lesser is the founder of the Omega Institute, which is in upstate New York. And her whole basic premise in the book Broken Open is that life takes on far greater meaning and richness when we recognize that there is something inside that is empty.
Yes.
So it's like a hole in the heart. And Lesser says that until we are willing to cooperate with the call to explore that emptiness and to allow for the possibility that something can be put in its place, then we're stagnant. But when we cooperate with that and allow it to happen, it's what Lesser calls being broken open. And that broken open is the spirituality of the Christian tradition and of all traditions.
Well, there's three people that makes me think of: St. John of the Cross, Richard Rohr, and Thomas Merton, because each of them expressed, well, even St. Teresa of Avila, all expressed that the only two things that break the heart open is great wounding and great love.
Mm-hmm.
And without either of those or both of those, the heart remains closed because it thinks everything's just fine the way it is.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think part of this process also is the recognition that I'm not the only one in crisis in this world. And one of our biggest issues is our own ego. We really think we're at the center of things, and we're not. And part of the process of spirituality, of Advent and in general, is how do we manage to get out of ourselves so that we can think about the other?
Yes.
And I'd like to talk a little bit about Jean Vanier, if I may.
Yes, please do.
Well, Jean Vanier is one of my favorite heroes. Jean Vanier was the founder of the L'Arche communities.
Oh, yes.
And he was a humanitarian and a great believer in building bridges to those less fortunate. And the L'Arche community was an environment, a setting in which people with disabilities, mental and physical, could come And the interesting thing about it was that anyone who served on staff in a L'Arche community did not see themselves as taking care of those with disabilities, but just the other way around, just the opposite. Those with disabilities teach me. And it's just a remarkable image of the reversal of roles where the broken teaches the one who feels that he's not broken.
We call it the mystic in disguise.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that's beautiful. Speaking of that, there's a beautiful prayer that you and I both love, and I believe you brought it with you tonight, the Pilgrim's Prayer. Would you like to share that with the listeners?
I'd love to. It's one of my favorite prayers, and I do say this prayer almost every day. This is a Pilgrim's Prayer by Thomas Merton, and it's let me read it. It says, "My Lord God, I have no idea where I'm going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does, in fact, please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore will I trust you always, though I may seem lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone."
Oh, that's beautiful. My guest tonight is the Reverend Dr. Gene Wallace, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that prayer on the other side of this break. And so you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John, and we'll be back in 2 and 2.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
I'm Andrew Caravello. Welcome to another edition of The More You Know, December 13th. Happy Thursday. Okay, so I have a really good one for you today. Today is National Cocoa Day. All right, something that we can all agree on. Okay, so the day fittingly takes place in December as a drink is often associated with cold weather. Although the names hot chocolate and hot cocoa are often used interchangeably, there technically is a difference between the two. The difference is not legal, however, and the two are often mislabeled at stores, most often with hot cocoa being labeled as hot chocolate. Now, the difference lies in that hot chocolate contains cocoa butter and hot cocoa does not. Hot cocoa uses cocoa powder that is made by removing cocoa butter from ground cocoa beans. Hot chocolate is made from barred chocolate, which has cocoa powder, sugar, and cocoa butter in it. These differences give both their distinct flavor and texture. Hot cocoa is thinner and more chocolatey, but is less rich. The richness in hot chocolate comes from the higher fat content, which comes from the cocoa butter. Now, on this day, December 13th, 2003, Saddam Hussein was captured. Also, 1972, on this day, the last human being landing on the moon, supposedly, happened. Apollo 17. Taylor Swift, American Sweetheart was born in 89. 1948, Ted Nugent was born. Oh, also born on this day, 1818, Mary Todd Lincoln. That would be Abraham Lincoln's wife. I'm Andrew Caravella. It's The More You Know, December 13th. Have a great day.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at KCAAradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. Again, for those of you watching on YouTube or Ustream, take a look at these beautiful flowers. My beautiful Gabby, she made those. And for a nominal fee, I can send you a cheap imitation of those. I'm just kidding. She's looking at me from across the studio like, yes, I don't care if next week is our anniversary. Try that, smart guy. Or online at mortgagesbyernie.com. Tell them Father John sent you. Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, NMLS 2551, is licensed by the Department of Business Oversight under the California Residential Lending Act. Ernie Gonzalez, NMLS 1086147, an equal housing lender. And if you missed those numbers, you can go to our show's website at www.viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, and all that information is there. But also, in addition to them, this show is listener supported. So if you want to help keep us on the air, please go to the support button, click on it, and it will give you all the options from PayPal to credit card to whatever you want to do. Whatever you give is greatly appreciated. And for those of you who have been contributing, I really thank you because you keep us on the air, and I am truly grateful. This evening, again, my guest is the Reverend Dr. Gene Wallace. He's an Episcopalian priest by training. I was going to say by trade. and before we go back into our talk, I want to give a quick shout out to the best board operator and sound engineer in the business, Nick Lane. How's you doing tonight, Nick?
I am doing wonderfully. How are you? And by the way, happy early anniversary to you and Gabby.
Thank you. Thank you. She says she's going to renew my lease.
So that's well, it's always a good day when they decide to renew your lease.
That's right.
Mine happened about a month ago. I'm good to go for another year.
Yeah,
my lease comes up again in around November, so we'll see if she decides to renew.
She says I have to pay extra if I want to stop sleeping on the couch.
Yes.
But I'm on a budget.
Well, so, there's always next year.
That's right. That's all. We always have things to hope for. Spring's eternal. Well, again, my guest tonight is the Reverend Dr. Gene Wallace. And when we went to commercial, we were talking about the Pilgrim's Prayer, which I find to be a deeply spiritual affirmation and confirmation of our relationship between us and our mysterious God. So talk for a few minutes about that, and then I'd like to hear a little bit about Henry Nouwen.
Okay. First of all, I would like to say a little something about religion and spirituality.
Please do.
They're not mutually exclusive.
True.
And my experience is that if you live in one to the exclusion of the other, you don't have a balance in the practice of your spiritual life. Religion is, I like to describe it as sort of like structural belief. It's like what goes into building a home. A home has to have structure and definition in order to provide the shelter that it's supposed to. Whereas fluid beliefs are beliefs that can't be easily nailed down. And in many ways, they're uncertain. And in many ways, they take twists and turns that you can't predict. And so the structural belief would be the religious structure of our lives.
Yes.
And the fluid beliefs would be the spiritual dimension in which the activity of God can enter into our human activity, and we can begin this wonderful exploration. And that is a mystery how that happens. Because, as I said before, God does not manipulate people and make them choose one way or the other.
Right.
God holds out desire. And the great desire, of course, as Augustine said, our hearts are restless until they find their rest in Thee, O God.
Yes.
And to recognize that desire is to start to participate in the mystery.
So it's not either or, it's yes.
Yes, absolutely. I did come across a wonderful quote by Richard Rohr, and I'm sure that Richard Rohr would be thrilled to be mentioned in the same sentence with St. John of the Cross.
Oh, yes, he would.
My goodness. But anyway, Richard Rohr, Franciscan priest, had this to say. He talked about the authority of accomplished deeds. In other words, faith without works is dead.
Yes.
And so the authority of accomplished deeds, he says, many people who put themselves under the cope of religion are, in fact, people who enjoy ideology and abstraction as an escape from real commitment and real conversion.
Wow.
And so
that's deep.
Yeah, the downside of being religious is that it becomes easily a mask against feeling the interior emptiness that I talked about.
Yes.
And so we talk endlessly about this and that, and we never get to the real issue.
You know, that's really true. And one of the things I find people are terrified of is silence.
Oh, yes.
And a few years back, I went on a 10-day silent retreat at a Buddhist retreat facility, and I loved it. I'm one of those people who really enjoys silence. Didn't always, but I really do now. And I was amazed at how many people came to me and said, how could you be silent for 10 days? And I thought, how can you be blissful without long periods of silence? I long for the silence because that's when I finally hear God. It takes a couple of days before my head shuts up. And it says, okay, if you're not going to talk, I won't either.
Absolutely. One of the most difficult things that I faced as a pastor was to try to get people to stop thinking about committees. In church life, everybody wants a committee. We want a committee for this, a committee for that, and some kind of program to promote growth or whatever. And I was always attracted to being a parish priest in small congregations because it was where I felt I could make the greatest connection with people. And so even though we didn't do anything in the way of momentous community achievement, I think that we managed to accomplish together an understanding of what it means to allow ourselves to be the people God wants us to be. And it's not flashy, this life of silence. It looks so remote and so unrelated.
Yes.
It looks like you're from a different planet. But in the long run, if someone can sit silently with their grief, they will eventually find solace and strength and joy.
Boy, that's a real mouthful. That's absolutely true. And we live in a society that's overstimulated. It amazes me. We went to a restaurant before we came here. And some restaurants I will go into, they'll have a television playing, a radio station playing, something else going on over here, all at the same time. So there's no danger of a silent moment.
Absolutely.
And for me, that's actually physically painful. And some people think I'm exaggerating. I'm not. It's physically painful. And yet other people, they feel safe because there's no chance they might get an independent thought. I think that's part of the problem that we're having in society right now.
I think you're absolutely right. One thing about the voice of spirituality that I think makes sense to me is that when you hear something that speaks at a different and deeper level than just the intellect or the emotions, we have the capacity to recognize that. Lately, I've been listening to Morton Lauridsen's O Magnum Mysterium.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness. I don't care where you are in your spiritual journey. Listening to that music will stop you in your tracks, and you automatically become aware there is something greater than myself.
Yes.
You know, so this journey that I'm talking about is not an unpleasant journey. It is difficult. It is challenging. But the blessings along the way are just magnificent. Oh, Magnum Mysterium. If it's been a while since you've listened, you should go and listen to it again.
I will. You know, I'm glad you brought that up. You and I both have a love of classical music. And I really feel that it's been something that has enriched my life. My grandmother was the one who introduced me to classical music. We were talking about her on the way out here, how she was a wonderful violinist. Mm-hmm. One of the things I didn't tell you is she at one time had her own little orchestra and used to play side by side with Lawrence Welk.
Oh, my goodness.
When he was doing barn dances.
Yes, right.
And so his orchestra would play for a while, they'd take a break. My grandmother's orchestra would play for a while, then she'd take a break, and then they would play again.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things I loved, and I know this is off our subject tonight, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. One of the things I loved that my grandmother said was Lawrence Welk was always a gentleman, and always courteous, and always supported everyone around him. And whatever you did, he tried to help you do it even better. Never mean-spirited. And I thought, what a wonderful tribute to a wonderful man.
Absolutely. Well, he wasn't full of himself, was he?
No. Speaking of wonderful men, we also have a gathered love of Henry Nouwen.
Yes.
And his spirituality, I love his, and everything was inclusive. He said only God could love every one of us and make us feel like he loved just one of us.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm taking the quote a little bit out of text, but that's an Irish thing.
Right. Well, of course, Nouwen's most famous work was The Wounded Healer.
Yes.
And that's what we become when we are faithful to the spiritual journey, because you can't help but be wounded, but you at the same time become a healer to others. And I came across this wonderful quote from Henry Nouwen. And he says, when we honestly ask ourselves which person in our lives means the most to us, we often find that it is those who, instead of giving advice, solutions, or cures, have chosen rather to share our pain and touch our wounds with a warm and tender hand.
Mm. You know, when I was studying to be a hospice chaplain, taking CPE, that's clinical pastoral education for those who don't know what those letters mean, he was required reading.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And one of the things that we're told often is you talk too much. Mm-hmm. You need to listen more.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Parker Palmer, a Quaker theologian and activist? Parker Palmer, I've forgotten which one of his books I read this, he talked about going through a period of real depression. And he would just sit in his room. And he was in a Quaker community. And he tells the story of this particular gentleman who would come in daily and sit at Parker's feet and just rub his feet. He wouldn't say a word, and Parker Palmer didn't say a word, but this act of love, massaging his feet day after day after day, and then the man would just get up and leave. Not a word was exchanged, but that act of touching, that gentle act of touching, is what brought him out of his depression.
You know, at one time I was very active in the AIDS movement and working with AIDS patients. And I found the best thing I could do for them is to rub their feet and say nothing. Because at that time, we didn't know how it was spread. Nobody would touch them. Mm-hmm. But when I went in and just rubbed their feet, they would cry.
Yeah.
Because nobody had touched them for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that became so important that I didn't care if I contracted it or not. I felt a spiritual calling that's the most powerful sermon you can give.
Absolutely.
With no words, just love. Mm. So I would agree with that synopsis of what's going on. Mm-hmm. Well, we're coming up to our next commercial break, and my guest tonight is the Reverend Dr. Gene Wallace. He's a fantastic priest and a very dear friend of mine. So I'm thrilled to have him here. And we'll continue our conversation on the other side of this break in 2 and 2.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Hey guys, this is Andrew Caravella. Just wanted to let you know that KCAA has a new listener line for all of you that have a phone. Now you can listen to KCAA in the grocery store, in the doctor's office, or when you want to pretend you're on the phone with someone just so that creeper will leave you alone. Call 720-835-3099 today and listen to your favorite KCAA radio shows. That number again, 720-835-3099. KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no caller or listener behind.
If you're looking for a full or part-time sales position and you have radio, TV, or print media experience, KCAA has a great opportunity waiting for you that pays the highest commissions in the market. KCAA is the only station in the IE that broadcasts on 3 frequencies, so advertisers receive 3 ads for 1 low rate. This makes KCAA a must-buy for every local business. If you're interested in a sales position with us, email CEO@kcaaradio.com.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at KCAAradio.com. These are rented lips, and you can get a set of your own. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I'm your host, Father John Reed. Tonight's program is brought to you in part by Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, the name you've trusted for over 100 years. If you're looking to refinance or purchase a home, contact my friend Early Gonzalez at 888-284-8332. Again, that's 888-284-8332, or online at mortgagesbyernie.com. Tell them that Father John sent you and that I say hello to him. Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, NMLS 2551, is licensed by the Department of Business Oversight under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Ernie Gonzalez, NMLS 1086147, is an equal housing lender. And if you missed all that, go to www.viewpointwithfatherjohn.com. And in addition to them, this is a viewer-supported program. So please, if you're able to give some, this is my begging shoes. I ask you to do that. I'd be really grateful. I do thank you for your support. Again, I want to remind you that we're now on Instagram. Follow us there. I'm leaving some little neat videos over there, just a minute or two of some positive thought. And you can also share some of your thoughts with me there, or you can follow us on Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John. So let's have some fun together. It's a great community. I'm blessed to have some of the smartest listeners in the world, and I know that because I met a number of you, and I'm always impressed. And I want to thank you that are listening worldwide. Some of the letters I've been getting from Brazil, from Panama, and from the Philippines. I really do pay attention to what you send me, and I'm grateful. You've said some very kind things, and I certainly am glad to have you as part of our family. Very excited that our guest tonight is the Reverend Dr. Gene Wallace. He's my dear friend and certainly a wonderful example of the arms of Jesus. To become a priest in a traditional church setting where you're Episcopalian, Eastern Orthodox like I am, Roman Catholic, Lutheran, we go through a thing called seminary. We jokingly call it Jesus School. And during that, we go through what's called formation. And that's what helps shape us towards priesthood. And that's very individual, and we all have our own experiences. So I'd like to ask Father Gene to share some of his seminary experience with us, if he would.
Well, thank you, Father John. I'd be thrilled to do that. I was thinking about how spirituality and the practice of spirituality can actually be a really dangerous process.
Yes.
Dangerous in the sense that if you're sincere about it, you will be challenged to grow and become a different person than you are today. The challenge, of course, is a willingness to admit that you don't have a proper perspective on things. And that was hard for me because I started out my pastoral ministry over 40 years ago as a very biblically conservative evangelical Christian. And I served in that framework for 10 years. And then I entered into a crisis in my life, and I felt that something was very missing. And so I went back to school. I went to the Episcopal Divinity School in Cambridge, Massachusetts. This is in the early 1980s. And EDS, Episcopal Divinity School at that time, was a hotbed of political causes. And one of the interest groups represented there was the homosexual or gay lesbian community. And I went to that school convinced that homosexuality was a sin. And so here I am in the midst of all these homosexual people, and as I spent time with them, I started to ask myself, can they be that wrong? And can I be that right? And it did create a tremendous crisis in myself. And I remember going to my faculty advisor, Dr. Ivan Kaufman, and I said, Ivan, I'm in crisis because these are wonderful people. And he said, Gene, I went through the very same thing. And I came to believe that if love is love, it doesn't matter the sexuality behind it.
Yes.
And I converted instantly on the spot. And to this day, I have been a great advocate of same-sex marriage and the blessing of homosexual love, because I think it reflects a true sense of commitment, just as heterosexual love does. But it was a crisis for me, and it was very, very difficult, and I lost friends over it.
Sure. That's where we put religion ahead of God.
I think so.
And one of the things that Richard Rohr says that I really cling to, he says, if your religion teaches you to hate, you have the wrong religion.
Mm-hmm.
Healthy religion is all-inclusive. And it's funny because I just did a video on Instagram about this yesterday.
Oh, really?
About healthy religion is always pointing to something larger to itself than itself, and it's always inclusive, never exclusive. Because if God is love, and I believe with every fiber of my being that God is love, then for anyone to be excluded, love couldn't stand it. So God couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
So it's just my opinion, but I'm right.
Well, of course you are. You know, I would just like to share a little bit about my own pastoral experience.
Yes.
I've been a pastor for over 40 years, and I have loved every moment of being a pastor, mostly because people shared their lives with me, and I was able to share mine with them. And there was this sense of togetherness, and that doesn't always happen. And if anybody is serious about the spiritual journey, my encouragement to that person would be, don't try to do it alone. You need community. You need a place where you're loved, a place where you can go, a place where you will be affirmed and accepted and encouraged to seek your journey.
You know, you just described the difference between a house and a home. A house is a structure where you can go and hang your hat. A home is a place you go and you're loved and you love those around you. That's a home.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if you're by yourself, it's just a house. We need others to make it a home. I think that's one of the great reasons for the Trinity, that God wasn't alone either.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good image. Yeah, yes it is.
So, well, that's beautiful. What else would you like to share with us tonight?
Well, I hadn't anticipated that, Father John. All I can say that first of all, last Friday I just celebrated my 70th birthday.
Happy birthday!
And for some reason, this feels like a milestone for me. Like I've accomplished something. I don't know why it feels so special, but it's given me the hope to believe that life is not ended. Just because I'm 70 doesn't mean that I just sort of endure until it's all over. But I have a new encouragement to want to be more responsive to the call, to continue the journey, to continue the search. It's wonderful, I think, to be able to say after all these years that the journey is still as exciting as when I began.
Oh, that's nice.
Absolutely.
And full of surprises still. You know, one of the things I tell people quite often, and particularly people I counsel with, is that I reserve the right to change my opinion tomorrow based on new information. And I think of when I was early in priesthood, what my ideas were, what was good, what was bad, what was right, what was wrong. And there are so many times I had to contradict myself because I realized I didn't see the whole picture. And that what I thought was bad was not so bad. And what I thought was good was not so good. But it all had to lead to life. And if I didn't respond to that and be open to change, then really I wasn't living. I was stuck in a box and looking at a picture and thinking that that picture is what life is.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and we never know how we affect someone else's lives.
Yes.
Life. For some reason, I'm thinking about this as you were talking. I had an experience where a woman was coming to the Sunday services, and she was depressed, and clinically depressed, and suffering terribly. And the next thing I know, I'm notified that she committed suicide.
Oh, gosh.
And in her suicide letter, she said, "Please ask Father Wallace to do my service." I couldn't believe it when I was told that. To think that even in that darkest hour, she had someone in whom she felt hope and trust and goodness. So that was one of the greatest privileges of my life, to do that service.
And so she felt loved her unconditionally.
Yes, I think she did, yes. So in a way, even though life was so terrible for her, she had something. And I think that's true for all of us. No matter how difficult we think life is, we have something.
Yes. I think of the expression, namaste.
Oh, yeah.
The God in me recognizes and salutes the God in you. And I think that love looks through my eyes into your eyes and sees love's self reflected.
Yeah. It's I love namaste. It's a wonderful greeting, affirmation of where we both are in this mutual journey. The spirituality of Advent is a remarkable time of year, and we need to take this back from the commercialism of our culture.
Yes.
And get back to the basics of the responsibility all of us have to be introspective and to question the quality of our lives.
And to be renewed.
Yes.
It's a time of renewal, and to stop pouring into the cup of tea. Instead, let us be emptied.
Yes, that's a wonderful image.
And that way, when we hear the voice of the baby Jesus, we don't have to go outside to hear it. We can go within and say, yes, I hear you, and I hold you as you're holding me. And to me, that's the true Advent message going into the wonderful celebration of the birth of Christmas.
Yes.
So, well, my guest tonight is the Reverend Dr. Gene Wallace. He's been a great guest. I have a couple things to go over. Nick's looking panicked through the window because he thinks I just ended the show, and I did not. Don't pull your hair out. Oh, never mind, you're bald. And every week we do the bald joke stuff with him, and I appreciate he's such a good sport.
Yeah,
and
I was talking about bald joke. Be kind.
I am being kind. I'm being the only kind I know how to be. And so, hey, it's not like that lady told me the other day I had a cultivated face. I said, really? She says, yeah, it looks plowed under. So, anyhow, a couple things. Next week is a very special show. It's the Thursday before Christmas. And one of the reasons I want to have Father Gene here tonight to talk a bit about the spirituality of Advent, which goes into all of our spiritual practice, is because next week I won't have a guest. It's just going to be me, and I want to talk to you about the mystical Christmas. Now, people sometimes don't understand the word mystical. Unfortunately, in some areas of our Christian family, there's some real dysfunction, and if they don't understand a word, they respond with fear and say that that's bad. We don't have mystics, they say. Well, that's not true. The entire Christian faith and religion is based on mystics. The first century fathers and mothers were mystics. It's not a dirty word.
No, it's not.
It means a spiritual awakening. And what mystics are talking about is that they're experiencing what many of us read about. But for them, it's not a philosophy. They're living it. And when it comes to Christmas, we are getting a new opportunity. We have the opportunity every day, but we focus it on Christmas morning of being that mystic in the making. And what that is we're willing to have the experience of the Christ Spirit. Remember, Jesus and Christ are two different things. People think that Christ is Jesus' last name. It's not. And Jesus was the personality and the human that the Christ Spirit expressed through, so that we would have someone that we could hang on to, identify with, and love. But Jesus made it very clear that this is in us too. In fact, he said, the God that is within me, and I'm paraphrasing, the God in me is the God in you. And, we look at 1 John, where it talks about, the fact, the Father's in the Son, Father's in the Son, and the Son's in the Father, and the Father and the Son are in you, if you're loving, and such. Christmas is where we are supposed to bring that together. Now, I will admit, in the Western world, you guys do it wrong. It's supposed to be in January.
Yes, January 6th.
And for me to not say that would be unorthodox, and I'm Orthodox. So, but brothers and sisters, whatever day you celebrate Christmas, let the nativity be in your heart. Let me tell you what I mean by that, and Father Gene's welcome to comment on this. It starts with the acceptance of Mary, the willingness, and saying, be it done unto me according to your word. Saying, okay, it scares me to death, but I'm going to trust you anyhow. It's Joseph saying, I don't understand this, but I'm going to believe there's something truer than what my eyes see. Mythos. And then it's the birth of Jesus coming to expression that the experience of both says, aha, God is with us.
Beautifully said.
And so during this time, This is our time, as we said, Namaste. Well, I like to say in another language, but saying the same thing. I see Christ in you. And I see Christ looking back at me. And without both of us, God is not truly expressed. Well, brothers and sisters, we're coming to the end of this hour, and I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank my dear friend, Reverend Dr. Gene Wallace, for being with us, my good friend, Father Gene. I want to thank Gabby for being so wonderful as she always is. I'm the luckiest man in the world. I'm thrilled that I am coming up to another year of wedded bliss. You have no idea why I'm the luckiest man in the world, but I know, and I get it, and I'm very grateful. I want to thank Nick for doing a wonderful job as he does every week. He's the best in the business, and I'm very fortunate to have him. And for you, my listeners, my brothers and sisters, if no one has told you this week that they love you, let me be the first. And may you have a sacred and holy Advent. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, this is Andrew Caravella. Just wanted to let you know that KCAA has a new listener line for all of you that have a phone.